This Thrive Loud episode is brought to you by Hinge Consulting. Success on Amazon hinges on well-executed strategies. Contact Hinge Consulting to learn about total Amazon channel management and to see if your business has what it takes to grow over 300% over the next 12 months. That's Hinge Consulting at hingeconsulting.co.
Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond. Wait a second. I've been thriving loud my entire life. Lou Diamond? Sounds like a motivational country singer if you ask me.
Now I'm getting really excited. Okay, this is the part where I'm going to get loud.
Holy crap, here we go.
I like telling stories.
I learn best through experiences.
Everything I do is because of everything I did.
Talk about having maximum impact while having a ton of fun.
When you can net through that, what you do leave behind for your listener will have more impact.
Wow, bring it on.
It's time to take an inside look at those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. Today on Thrive Loud, we bring you a consultant, a coach, a designer facilitator. He is focused on helping organizations frame and sustain a conversation with their teams that help them be more productive. I know I'm going to love this conversation today. He has a new book that just came out that's right on the forefront, that's right in line with what we need to talk about. He is what we like to call the conversation designer, and we're going to have a great time chatting today. Thrive Loud listeners, Daniel Stillman. Daniel, how are you today?
I'm pretty good, and the sirens behind me let you know that I am recording live from Harlem, USA. Hopefully just be able to bullet. You know, it's the sign of life.
This is actually, the ideal situation we want. We want everyone to be as authentic as possible. And as long as the sirens aren't heading to a building that you're in that's burning down,
that's a really
good to go. I like it. So Daniel, people on Thrive Loud, we love to hear a little bit of their journey. All our guests really have a great opportunity to share something special about that. Why don't you lead a little bit, kind of bring, not from the womb till now, but something like that brings us up to speed to understand how this has been an area of focus, because facilitation is something that more and more the art of it and really understanding what is behind it is something that everyone needs to learn in whatever business you're in. So I think that'll be a fun way to continue this conversation.
Thank you very much, Lou. And thanks for having me on. And I'm glad you see value in the thing. Sometimes I see that facilitation is like a tool. It's a means to an end for a lot of people. And what they want is great results. What they want is a team that's aligned. What they want is a leadership team that knows how to collaborate instead of to have conflict. But because they see it as a means to an end, everyone takes the time to think about how to get people engaged, to get people involved, and how to literally design the conversation. And for me personally, I started my facilitation journey just because when I got out of design school, I was a young ish industrial designer, and I had to learn client management and how to get people getting on a journey together. And I discovered the art of the workshop, getting people to think through the problem and to encounter the data and think like their users. And it got people together, it got them thinking about a good future that they could build. I was very lucky. In about 2015, I worked with a group out in Australia called Second Road, and they called their work conversation design. And at first I was like, that's a little douchey, but it, right? Like, sure, you design conversations, but the truth of the matter is that it wasn't. Sometimes people call up and say, hey, can you facilitate this executive session? We've got an agenda. We just need you to run it. I'm like, I can't, that's not the way it works. It's like saying, can you do Hamlet this exact way? You have to really live the role. You have to understand the goal.
Right.
You have to know where the group is now and where they want to go to. And that is a design process. You design a conversation so that hopefully the conversation of the group changes.
Yeah.
That term perked up my ears, and I started to think like, well, if that's a conversation, what is that? What are the implications of that? And that started me on the journey that started my podcast and interviewing people who design conversations at bigger levels than I usually get to design, and people who design them at smaller levels, the one-on-one conversation, the internal conversation. So it's been an eye-opening couple of years exploring conversations.
Let me dive into this about going back to the fact that you were an industrial designer. What were the types of things that you trained and actually produced back then?
Well, here's the funny thing is that design school, we like to joke that all you get out of design school is a portfolio and some contacts. But hey, that's just literally, you're like, hey, good luck out there. I wasn't taught about client management, this thing that's called design thinking that is so popular right now in corporate America and in startups. None of this stuff existed. I had to learn all of this stuff when I came out of school, and it was a real education. I had to do everything twice as fast and twice as good, and had to bring everyone along on the journey. And this was working with like Panasonic, designing the future of televisions. I was working with S.E. Johnson, thinking about bug repellents in the home, working with Epson, who wanted to be the Apple of printers, whatever that meant at the time. I worked on what was supposed to be Hearst Corporation, their major play. It was a full-sized e-ink touchscreen device. It was Razor. It was like 2008, right after the iPhone had come out. People didn't really understand this idea of having like a third device, and they looked at it like, this thing is beautiful, but like I don't need this. Mm-hmm. And so we were designing some crazy stuff back in those days.
I like this. We had one of the early guests on Thrive Loud. We had Josh Goldberg and Fanny Cravoy, who come from Studio Analogous, and they are web designers and really strategic thinkers. And one of the quotes that Fanny came out with, and this is actually like her purpose on this planet, is that the world is a better place with great design. And I think what's really great, and you talk about these meetings that you have or are helping to facilitate, or these conversation designers, which I like it, it's really important to understand that how much better would our meetings, how much better would our workshops, how much better would our keynotes and all the messages we go through be if they are well designed?
Yeah. And so here's a really simple thing. We have this word groupthink, which has this negative connotation, like, oh, well, it's just groupthink. But isn't it great when a group actually decides something and can do it together? We want groups thinking. And the biggest thing people can change, and this is stuff I talk about in my book, is there's some simple levers of change to change conversations for the better. And the easiest one is turn taking. Like, if you don't buy the book, just don't waste your time. Just say, okay, don't let anybody talk first. Let everyone write down what they think, and then put it on a wall, and then see where everyone is. I can't tell you how many times this has gotten an endless loop conversation where one person is kind of like, well, I don't think this is where we should go. And why is this what we're thinking about? And because they have power, nobody's willing to say, can you please just shut up? Seriously, because we're all thinking that you're wasting our time. This is years ago. I had a senior executive. This was a giant bank that I probably shouldn't talk about this particular project, but I will say that he complained for almost 20 minutes that we were going to spend 30 minutes talking about a topic. And I just said, look, can we just take a poll? And an anonymous poll, like everyone will write down, is this the user we should be focusing on or not? Simple question. All the 25 people in the room wrote it down. We clustered it up, and he was in the minority. Now, that wasn't a way to say, hey, step off, settle down. It was like, well, this is where everyone else is. So now what would you like to do? And that to me is being conversational about the confrontation, right? I think a lot of people are like, hey, so here it is, let's move on. But it still is a conversation, because he could say, well, I still believe that it's a waste of time. And you're like, that's great. What do you think we should do now? Right? In the face of this data that everyone else thinks differently, what ought we to do? And that is a sort of a conversational approach to these kinds of group dynamics and group conflict. It's not a win-win. It's not about winning the conversation. It's not about ending the conversation. It's about finding a way to continue it in a way that is going to be productive for everyone.
So let's ask that question. And this is, as many people who are listening to this show, they either have their own companies or members of organizations where they're in tons of meetings or workshops.
Yes. And
they've seen all different types of ways to have that meeting actually flow.
Yeah.
My question to you is, what do you see the most often as one of the biggest hurdles to getting to effective, efficient conversations in the meeting? Is it a matter of not properly laying out the meeting itself, not designing it in a structure that works well? Or is it just time itself that people are too busy trying to talk themselves and talk over? Talk to me about how you can help. Is it the shape of the actual meeting or facilitating the work itself within it?
So the first thing I'm going to point out is when you said the shape of the meeting, that's a really interesting word. And I'm a big fan of actually having a mental model of what the shape of a conversation should look like. I come to design thinking and a design background where the whole point of the creative process is to come up with more than one option for the challenge at hand, to explore some of those options and then to close them down and come up with one or two or a few that we're going to work on. And that open, explore, and close in the creative problem solving world, they talk at diverging and converging. Some people I know talks about flair and focus. Just having that shape in mind and telegraphing it to people, saying this is going to be the shape. We're going to open, we're going to explore, and we will close. And we're going to spend 15 minutes on each of them, leave ourselves some time for next actions and that sort of conversation. Getting people to agree on the shape of the conversation is the most important thing. And the problem, Lou, is time. Because facilitation is thought of as something that either you're good at or you're kind of good at or whatever, we don't have time for this shit. Sorry, are we allowed to curse on this podcast? I apologize.
You absolutely can. Absolutely.
Fuck yeah.
Thank fucking God. All right. Okay. But the problem is because it's a design problem, it takes time to design it correctly. And I'm not saying you have to take a day or a half day. I'm saying take 20 minutes to draw a visual agenda. This is when the conversation matters. Hold it up on the wall and say, this is our plan. What do you all think? And I get it. I was talking with a friend of mine who's a very talented facilitator, and he's working inside of a company now where they have these 30-minute meetings. And it's just it's a tremendous challenge to have productive conversation in that kind of a compressed time. I think there's this idea of, we should be able to do it fast. Everyone just says their piece, but it's hard to get down one more level. I think people should be having smaller meetings. They should be having fewer meetings. They should be only having meetings where there's an agenda or an intention or a real challenge. And they should be very, very conscious and very, very aware of how they are managing turn taking. And what you talked about is the shape of the conversation, or what I would call is the thread that ties it together. Do you have a thread? An agenda is not 6 things we need to do today. That's not a meeting that's going to cohere. You need to say, okay, so here's the shape of this process that we're going to go through. Right. And this is why it matters. That's why I want you to come to the meeting. That's why I want you to literally show up to the meeting. And that's why I need your brain power at this meeting, because people shouldn't have to come to your meeting if they don't want to. Right. And they won't come mentally if they don't want to.
Daniel, I was going to ask this question because this is something that I have seen, because I've seen great facilitators in meetings. I've seen people who do what you do for a living. And I find it really interesting that it doesn't always have the initial buy-in, the role of being this conversation designer at the beginning. However, I have never experienced a situation where after a meeting that the people in the room didn't turn around and go, oh my God, we really needed this person here. They all know that that is something that they need. How do you handle that, I guess, in the way that you communicate your services to a lot of people? Because there is some kind of feeling that they can handle it themselves.
Yeah, and this is a tough one because I teach facilitation too, and I have an unlucky advantage because when I've come into an organization, a lot of stuff's already happened, and I naturally disrupt the power structure just by being there because I've been authorized. People have been authorized to spend time with me, and because they're spending time with me, they can't do other stuff. They're like, oh God, we have to clear our schedule because Daniel's here and we're doing this thing that's important. And that deforms the power structure and the time structure of a company normally. When I'm not there, when people have these tools and they want to bring other people into it, it is so much harder. It's so much harder. And that's why people like things like Scrum and the Google Venture Sprint structures that you can name, you can call on them by name, you can invoke them like a magic spell, abracadabra. We're going to do a Google Sprint. And people go, oh, yeah, let's do that. 5 days, that seems like a lot. I don't know. But at least it is possible to clear the power structures out by bringing in someone else's power. We're going to do a business model canvas today, guys. And it's got to be done because we need to explain blank and blank. And so I think other facilitators, they need to call on a higher power. They need to invoke the name of a larger deity. It's like it's an incantation. You draw a circle and you name a power. And so that's why giving there's a wonderful agency that I actually had a lady from them on my podcast. It's called AJ and Smart. They've got an amazing YouTube channel. All they do is design sprints in the spirit of Jake Knapp's book, Sprint, which is a wonderful book. And they have their big sprint and they do these little things where they have here's the lightning decision jam. It's going to be 30 minutes and we're going to get all of the things out that we need to decide and we're going to organize them in these ways. And at the end, we're going to have a prioritized list. And so for amateur facilitators or somebody who wants to get into structured dialogue and making things happen really intensely well and in a small amount of time, it's great to borrow structures that have some sort of coherence from other people before they start cooking up their own recipes, if you will. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And I wanted to ask this question because it was kind of funny. I love to always pick out highlight reels. I guess what I would love to know, Daniel, in your experience in the role that you've played as the conversation designer, can you share, and you could leave the specifics out of who the organization was, maybe one particular session that you put together and led and facilitated that you would call one of those days when you were done, that you were very proud of yourself, of the work that you did in that session?
Yeah, I know that. So there's a wonderful scene from, what is it, Pumping Iron? Yeah. The classic
Arnold.
weightlifting movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. And there's a scene where he's lifting these ridiculous weights and he drops them down and he stands up and he says, "I feel like a jumbo jet." Which is, I love that phrase. And I remember the very first time I had that experience as a facilitator, and this was kind of middle of my career. I was facilitating. It was one of these huge innovation days. It was the Robin Hood Foundation was bringing together all of these nonprofits, and I had just gotten dropped in. It was a group from a nonprofit. I can't remember the name of the company now, so I can't even break their silence. But I'd done a lot of work at the time. I had my own company called the Design Gym, and we were just taking off. And I designed our design thinking curriculum. I designed our design thinking framework. And so when I stepped into this group and they had to sort of make this big leap into alignment about a challenge that we're working on. Okay, look, here's my design thinking framework. Here are the 5 things I think we need to do. And we only have about an hour, which is a ridiculous amount of time. So what I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to spend just 10 minutes on this first part and then maybe 20 minutes on this second part. And then I'm hoping in the last 30 minutes we can make headway on these other 3. And they were like, that sounds great. And that is the power of invitation, right? The power of inviting people into a structure. But it was my structure. And I was like, okay, cool. You're in, you're with me. And we did it. And at the end, they were applauding. And they were like, this feels great. We feel clear. We feel aligned. We feel enthusiastic. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like a jumbo jet. I had that feeling like I just crushed it. But instead of crushing it, I elevated these people. These people who were confused became clear. And honestly, it's an elating feeling. I get high off of watching other people get clear and move forward.
So let's flip the tables here. I love to ask the questions to all the Thrive Loud guests, Daniel, to take this to the other extreme of what you just shared. When you have trouble thriving, what or who do you turn to? What practice or what individual you look to get back on the thriving track?
Sure. So I want one of the frameworks in the book. The thing that woke me up is this idea of if there's big conversations and there are small conversations, and there's ones that happen inside a company and there's ones that happen outside. And that was my first wake up call, that I wasn't taking care of what you're calling thriving, what I'm calling my internal conversation, and actually taking care of myself and being in dialogue with people. And so the first thing, and I listened to Greg's podcast for sure, and I loved his answer about going out to nature. For me, I definitely know that I need to take care of myself, so I got to get a lot of sleep. But if I'm really, really at the edge and I'm falling apart, I have to say the person who I go to is my mom. My mom understands my work at an amazingly human level, and she loves me unconditionally. And the other person, and this is a challenge because my mother's been that person for so long. I also have my girlfriend Janet, who I love tremendously, and she's like the other person where unconditional love, total understanding of why I do this work I do, and understanding why it matters to me, why when I fall short, why I take it so seriously. And so it's really great to have people like that in the corner.
That's great and very personal. And for the Thrive Out listeners, that was Greg Larkin, the episode, which you can go back and listen to, which Daniel and I have our common connection through, which was a very inspiring and fun episode as well.
Yeah.
And by the way, great story and very important. Look, these important people in our lives are the ones who kind of re-energize us and also question us when we need to, which is a great resource to have
100%.
at all those moments. I thought about this and I was going to share this story, but I think it'll come better in a question form to you. And that is, Daniel, talk about the most wacky exercise or thing you've done in a meeting to kind of fit in line with the shape of what the meeting should be, to really help to get the goal there, that when you presented it, the room might have even gave a little, what are we going to do? I'd love to hear those stories.
Sure. Oh, man. I mean, so I just finished, right before pre-launching this book, I finished another book called The 30-Second Elephant and the Paper Airplane Experiment. And it's about origami exercises that I use to help groups unlock stuff. And this is definitely, I started this book a year ago because I was like, this is the weirdest thing. These are the weirdest things I do. When I was a kid, I was a huge origami nerd. So obviously, when I started teaching this UX bootcamp a couple of years ago for a General Assembly, I thought to myself, I really want to teach people about collaboration and visual communication. So obviously, we should make some paper airplanes together. And the funny thing is that in a workshop setting, people go, okay, I can make the weirdest stuff seem normal. But people are like, okay, let's see where this is going, even so. And so the origami stuff, the paper airplane and the elephant exercises and some of the others in the book, people are like, okay, but then they go, oh, this was fun. So that is my jam, is getting people to sort of step significantly outside of their comfort zone. And then, like I said, landing the plane and making them feel like, wow, I got some new perspective out of that unexpectedly.
I think what I love about Thrive Loud interviews, and when I sit in this chair, I'm able to piece all the pieces together here and understand you. It makes perfect sense, right? You have this industrial design background. You, as a child, put together, must have had really good fine motor skills, because, by the way, I tried origami as a kid and I have the worst fine motor skills. And I always loved the things that came together, but I had trouble doing it. And I know that you're about fun and bringing people together. So you have that connective spirit, and obviously those strong bonds between your mom and your girlfriend just kind of show what a genuine great person you are, and a likable person, which is really important in the role that, but also in the role that you play, right? Because of the fact that, you could have somebody come in and be a little bit aggressive or bossy and rub the wrong way. To be able to have that empathy and that general likeness that people will find is really important. Yeah.
Well, so I'll say this, Lou. I work at it really hard. And one of the reasons I like facilitation is that it affords me the opportunity to be my best person, to be my best self, because I can rub people the wrong way really hard. But when I'm in front of a room, I do my best to be my best. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's a great thing to do. Is it's wonderful to get to try and reach your highest level of performance. When you don't, you can see the results.
It's awesome. Daniel, give us all the plugs, all the places people can learn about you, find this new book, and all those social media things as well. I could put it in the show notes, in which I will, but it comes much better from you.
Sure. The easiest place to go is theconversationfactory.com. So that's the name of my podcast, The Conversation Factory, because we manufacture fresh conversations. And that's where you can find the book pre-order. I am also running a contest where you can get 9 books that have affected me personally and helped me on my journey, and learn more about the book that's coming out. And you can see the podcast episodes there. You can follow me on Twitter, DA Stillman, on the Twitters. I do that. I tweet fairly frequently. So that's a place people can find out of me. And they can also look at danielstillman.com, which is sort of where I keep my consulting work and me sort of slightly separate from the Conversation Factory.
I like it. And now, Daniel, the question that you deemed ahead of the recording of this episode is unfair.
Unfair. It's an unfair question.
So I'm going to ask you what your all-time favorite movie is, or more than that. I want to hear why you feel the question's unfair.
because I've listened to a couple of episodes and everyone hems and haws on this, because I think there's like a set of there's like heuristics where you're like, this is the movie I've watched the most, or this is the movie I could watch anytime, or this is the movie I think this is the best movie ever. And I noticed when I was thinking about this, for years, The Matrix was one of the movies where just I could watch it all the time forever, beginning, middle, and end. And then I realized that I have another Wachowski brothers movie that I really love, which is The Cloud Atlas, which I think people think is a weirder movie, and it is. And I've read the book finally, and the book makes the movie even more amazing. So I'm going to do what everyone does and say, well, here are these two movies. Also, I'm rewatching Moana because it's amazing. I don't know why, but the music's great. So, but yeah, The Matrix.
It's so good. All of them are good, and the first one is just brilliant.
Yeah.
What I'd love to say about this, and the listeners can appreciate this, everyone always says, Lou, why do you ask this question? A lot of it has to connect with the audience, but it's also how the movie connects with the guest. And there is a great thing about this, and I just think about this recently, one of the episodes that launched in late July, we had Oren, I forgot who it was. I forgot if it was Oren Flatt. Whoever it was, I think it was episode 158, the guest actually responded that the movie that he loved the most was Patton.
What?
And I could not get an understanding of why it was until you understood how he looked at it as a leader, as a decision maker, to somebody living in the moment. Yeah. And it was a really, really great explanation. It was Oren Clapp's episode.
And the moment in The Matrix when he sees the code and takes a deep breath and just ripples the entire universe. That's the moment. That's the moment.
It's brilliant, and I think it defines it as somebody who can look from design. It really does describe that, because that movie is designed so well from the concept, the vision of everything. So
it is.
Daniel Stillman, we said it nicely. We said, hey, let's connect together and speak. I go, dude, let's just go on the show and just do it, because I have a feeling it'll come out well. And
I love it. Just jump right in with both 4 feet.
I'm with both 4 feet. I'm glad we did. And I'm glad you came on the program. I think this is great. And so great to have you on the program.
Thank you so much, Lou. I really appreciate your time. You're an amazing interviewer. It's super fun to talk to you.
Oh boy, thank you. And you're not a bad guest. We're going to have to play home and home. I'm going to have to jump on the other program as well.
Absolutely. You're going to see that I'm a much more difficult interviewer. I'm taking notes.
I'm up for the challenge, Daniel. How about that?
Challenge accepted.
Great stuff. And to all the Thrive Loud listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Thrive Loud. Or find us on the web at thriveloud.com.
Have you been boring yourself with uninteresting podcasts made by monotone and overly serious people? Are you tired of hearing the same stuff every day on NPR? Then please consider helping us on our mission of making Thrive Loud the #1 business podcast. Because, well, let's be honest, we're #1.